Alexander or Lulu Riley. I'm from Madison County, and I'm in the Lucky Thumpers Club, and I've been in 4-H for about 4 years now. And I've also been raising rabbits for 5 years. And first I'd like to introduce you to Gooseberry. And this is my Dutch rabbit. He's a gray, which is just one of the colors in Dutch. And he's also a senior buck, which means that he's over 6 months, and the buck means that he's a boy. And today I'm going to be telling you about Dutch rabbit markings, which is, he's a Dutch rabbit. So the markings are kind of about what he's been judged on. And he actually has done really well in his lifetime. He's gotten a second at a national show in Washington, Pennsylvania. So out of all of the senior bucks, he was the second best. And he also was at one period of time the 13th youth rabbit in the nation. So he's ranked 13 out of all of the Dutch rabbits. And I hope that after this presentation that you'll learn more about him and why he actually received those things. So the first marking that he's judged on is the cheeks. And the cheeks are worth 12 points. And they're located on the side of the head. Look at the pictures, and they should be fully rounded. And if you see on this cheek over here, it's actually pretty rounded. But one of the problems that he has is it goes up high. If you see, there's a white area right here, which means he has high cheeks. And that's just a fault, which means that some points will be taken off of those 12 points. And another problem that's also common in Dutch is that they have hooked cheeks, which is what this rabbit has. If you see, they extend into the jaw and they don't round off, but a lot of rabbits have hooked cheeks, so it's not really that huge of a fault because judges sometimes expect it. And cheeks are actually really hard to perfect, and that's why they're worth so many points. And the next marking is the blaze. And the blaze is 5 points. And the blaze is supposed to be right on the forehead, and it's like a wedge-shaped area. And if you look at this rabbit, it actually has a fairly nice blaze. If you'll see, it starts out sort of wide, and it starts getting skinnier as it goes up, and it doesn't jut out any areas, or it starts coming in and then back out. But a problem with the blaze is what this rabbit has, and that's that it has a wide blaze, which means that if you see, it doesn't curve in completely, it just stays out and then it comes in. And that would also be points taken off as the blaze, which it's only 5 points, so it's not that huge of a deal, but it's still, you know, it may get you to winning if you have a really nice blaze. The next marking is the hairline, which that's not worth any points, but I really like it. It's like my favorite marking. And most rabbits don't have it. It's, you know, you don't have to have it, but I like it when they have it. And if you see right in between his ears, it's got white color extending up, connecting the blaze down to the lower white, and that's what the hairline is. Most rabbits don't have it, but it divides the right half of the rabbit and the left half of the rabbit, so it kind of shows like a clear distinction. And none of I think I have 2 other rabbits that have it, so it's like not common, and you can barely ever breed it into your rabbits. But the hairline leads into the neck, which is worth 5 points, and the neck's on the back of the head. And one of the problems with the neck is what this rabbit has, is it has 2 necks. And one of them's actually okay because the neck should be wedge shaped, just like the blaze are also very similar. But if you see, there's white over here that comes up, and there's also white over here, and that would be a fault and points taken off. But this rabbit right here actually has a really nice neck. If you see, there's white going up, and it doesn't go in odd places or jag out in certain places, or there's not just like a spot of color in the middle, which would actually disqualify it. But after the neck, there's an area of white, and then that goes into the next marking, which is the saddle, and that's worth 10 points. Now, even though it's not worth the most, it's often seen as the most, because as soon as you look at the rabbit, that's the first thing that you can notice. And one of the problems with the saddle is what this rabbit has. If you see, it doesn't go completely across. It should go straight across, like right behind the shoulders, kind of on top of them. And what happens is this rabbit, it's got waves in its saddle, and that's just called a wavy saddle. But this rabbit, which is Gooseberry, if you look at his saddle, it goes across, but then it kind of curves down. That's called a bias saddle. And I have, his son actually has a really biased saddle. It goes like perfectly and then it drops a lot. And even though he's a nice rabbit, he often never gets furs. He's never gotten furs just because of that saddle. So it's sometimes like seen more than it's actually worth. And the saddle actually continues to the bottom part of the rabbit, and that's called the undercut. And the undercut's worth 8 points. And in the gray rabbits, which is what this color variety is, you can't see the undercut by just looking at it. What you have to do is blow into it. And if you see the smoky blue color, that shows where it is. So you just blow across to find where it is. And lots of judges won't even take the time to look for the undercut in grays. They just kind of like overlook it. Or in some grays, you can actually see where it is because the smoky blue actually goes up higher on the hair shaft, but it shouldn't really. And one of the problems with the undercut is it actually has a disqualification, which means if it has that problem, it will not be able to compete and it'll just be taken off the table. And this rabbit almost has it, it's really close, is if you pull up its arm, you'll see color coming up. And if the color were to come up and go above where the elbow is, right here, if it were to be like up here, it would be disqualified. And this rabbit isn't as close, but it's not disqualified. But it also has a fault on it. If you see the undercut, it should go straight across and continue. But it's just got waves. So the waves would just be a fault, and that's kind of called just the wavy undercut. And there can also be biased undercuts. It's very similar to the saddle. And after the undercut, it goes down to the next markings on the rabbit's feet, and those are the stops. And those are worth 10 points, so about 5 points per foot. And the stops are one of those markings that you can never perfect, because in the standard, which is all my information is coming from, the Our Book of Standards, in that book it says that the white portion should take up 1/3 of the feet. And everyone has a different idea about what 1/3 is. So what I kind of figure is this is about half right here. So if you went up a little bit to about here, that's where the color should stop. And the toes actually are really long. If you see how far they extend. The color, I think, should come right below the toes. But one of the problems with the stops is that you want it up so close, but you don't want the color to run up too high, because if it does, it'll go between the toes. And if you have that problem, it's called a split stop. And it's also a disqualification. And this rabbit over here has that very closely on one. If you see there's color running up on this side, and if you look in between its toes, it's really close to running through. It just has one little white gap, so it wouldn't be disqualified. But that can or cannot be passed on to the other rabbits. And so another problem with rabbit stops is also that sometimes they're not the same length on each foot. If you see, the color goes up here on this foot and it's down lower on the other one. So when you're looking at it, they're not completely even. And points are also taken away from that. And those are the Dutch markings, and I hope you learned something today, that rabbits aren't just judged on how cute they are, or how fuzzy, or what their little whiskers look like, but they actually have a standard, and that you're further educated on them being, and I hope Dutch rabbit markings aren't all Dutch to you anymore.